I want to introduce our second speaker, Steph, who will speak about male pattern criminality and the unsuitability of self-ID. Steph is the founder of Facebook page Fair Go for Queensland Women, and she researches domestic and family violence. She also researches the impacts on women in prison who are forced to be housed with men who call themselves women, and the impact on crime statistics when men's crimes are recorded as women's crimes. Steph has 2 sons. Thanks, Steph.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Am I right? Okay. Good morning. All right. Okay. So thank you very much, Anna, and thank you all for being here today. It's wonderful to see so many new and old faces, not so old, I mean familiar maybe. On the 2nd of December 2022, Queensland's Attorney General, Minister for Justice, Minister for Women and Minister for the Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence had the following to say. In developing the bill, we have carefully considered the experiences of LGBTIQ+ stakeholders, the difficulties they face, and the recommendations they made in order to get these reforms right. Quite simply, we listened, and this bill is the result. Here, the Attorney General admits that the impacts upon others, particularly women and girls, and the public good was not considered in the creation of this bill. This is a grave error. The Attorney General also said, no one who engages in this process will do so lightly. It is a deeply personal process and decision which must be respected. Everyone in Queensland has the human right to freedom of belief and expression. That means men can believe they are transgender all they like, but also I have the right to not believe it.
Yes.
I have the right to not believe my life as a woman can be distilled down to sexist stereotypes, and I have the right to say I do not believe men can become women. The Attorney General, through this bill, would seek to remove those rights from me. There is no human right to coerce people to believe or say what you believe, and certainly no requirement that women must respect sexism and misogyny from men, as that is what it is for a man to say he is a woman. If he performs femininity, or even if he just says so. The Attorney General may as well mandate that all women respect when men say they are nice guys. It's not going to happen. Sex is immutable and observable. Quickly telling another person's sex is a foundational skill for survival, and women in particular are adept at this in a fraction of a second. It's not controlled by conscious thought because it's a basic and primitive function of the lower brain. Expecting this will change because of self-declaration is a nonsense. For those who do not know, Fair Go for Queensland Women have obtained Queensland Corrective Services data for those in prison on the 30th of June for each year of the past 10 years. So while Shannon Fentiman was defaming women and our reasonable concerns, Queensland Corrective Services were just emailing me the latest data, and I want to talk to you about that today. The Minister for Police and Corrective Services has pretended I have not been asking since June to meet with him about this information, because he knows I want to talk to him about the evidence that the Attorney General says doesn't exist. Is this so? She can say that? Is that why the Honourable Mark Ryan is avoiding me? I don't know. But on the 30th of June last year, there were 63 males who said they were transgender in the male prison estate. There were 0 females who said they were transgender in the female estate. That is a clear indication of the continuation of male pattern criminality.
Yeah.
If the Attorney General gets this bill passed, all 63 of those males will be able to demand transfer to the women's prison estate. And I find that abhorrent. This number of 63 also includes 6 males on charges or conviction of murder. So that's nearly 10%. It also includes 13 males whose most serious charge or conviction is aggravated sexual assault. Remember, this is a tiny and vulnerable population who pose no risk to women in single-sex spaces. Or so we're told by the Minister for Women. If this is the case, why are there 13 males who say they are trans in prison for aggravated sexual assault when out of all of the women in Queensland, there are 16 in prison for the same offence or charge? All, like 51% of the population, 16 women. 13 out of this tiny and vulnerable population are in prison, or were on the 30th of June. And that was their most serious offence. It doesn't take into account previous charges or convictions. It's just that particular incarceration period on that date. But the Attorney General on the 2nd of December said some groups will try to cloak their transphobia in the guise of women's safety, making claims about trans women accessing women's spaces, including change rooms and even domestic violence shelters. I want to be clear, there is no evidence domestically or internationally to support these outrageous claims. To be blunt, the Attorney General is dreaming. Karen White self-identified into a UK prison and has been convicted of raping 2 women in that prison. Katie Delatowski took advantage of the relaxation of social norms around males entering female spaces when he filmed a 12-year-old girl in a toilet and then later sexually assaulted a 10-year-old girl in the supermarket women's toilets. Delatowski used a fake name and spent over 2 months in a women's refuge where there were children who were escaping violence and difficult circumstances living in that shelter. More recently, Delatowski was sent from the men's prison to the female estate because he had assaulted another man. Diamond Blunt raped a woman in the showers at Rikers Island prison in the US. Darren Merriger has openly said he used self-ID laws in California to change his ID as he found prison difficult. Merriger has recently been arrested after being on the lam for nearly 12 months after exposing his penis in the women's section of a wee spa. Lots of people tried to pretend that didn't even happen, but he has been arrested and 5 women, including a girl, are the victims that he has been charged in relation to. He's also been charged in relation to other exposure incidents as well. He is a registered sex offender. Multiple women have spoken out about the fear and intimidation within female prison estates when men are housed with or near them. Critics like to say, this is about trans people. It's not. It's about males. It doesn't matter how they identify. The erosion of women's spaces and boundaries when there's clear evidence to show male pattern violence and criminality persists is simply unacceptable, and it doesn't matter what identity they claim. The Attorney General has forgotten too that there is a long-term study published in 2011 which shows that males who had undergone gender-related surgery retained male pattern violence. So that's 2011. I'm not sure what the Minister and the DJAG staff are looking for. If they say there's no evidence, I'm not sure what that is. How can she say there's no evidence? If, as the Attorney General seems to be suggesting, trans women are women, well, in what way? Because it's certainly not in the way of criminality. It is not similar to women's violence and perpetration of crime. Sexual offences committed by strangers are often a result of access and opportunity. So, why would we, when there are already significant numbers of women and families harmed by sexual violence, why would we increase access and opportunity? Why should women be reported and recorded as perpetrators of crimes committed by males? What of our rights to dignity and reputation? Why is it a human right to have a newspaper say that sexual crime committed by a male was committed by a woman? How is that progressing anyone's human rights? And indeed, what makes it safe to open all women's spaces to males who say they are transgender when some have openly admitted to stealing women's underwear and who say that their use of pornography helped form their gender identity? Not so long ago, everyone recognised that women in prison were vulnerable and in need of protection and care. Now, those women and their needs seem to mean nothing, particularly to the Attorney General, and it's also just throwing out the window long-standing rules about sex segregation in prison. The Department of Justice and Attorney General and Queensland Labor have done themselves a grave disservice in introducing this bill in this manner, with no consideration of public good and the needs of everyone in the community. When the Attorney General says there is no evidence, what she's really meaning is that she's discounting and disregarding the large and small indignities and risks self-ID imposes upon women and girls. What she means is that when self-ID bills are created, they do not adequately investigate the impacts upon women, and when it becomes law, there is no follow-up and no review of how it is working. What she means is that male violence is hidden in the female data once self-ID becomes law, and there is no way to accurately track the violence committed by these males, by this section of the male population. What she really means is no government has to date acted diligently and ethically in relation to women's reasonable and supported concerns, and they have not been objective and impartial in this matter. This is an affront to good governance, and all politicians should be up in arms over this, and it is quite astounding that they are not. Thank you.